Welcome to Dojo Live, the place where top minds in travel and hospitality check in to share insights and breakthroughs shaping the industry. Brought to you by Encora, your trusted partner for AI, cloud, and data driven innovation. Enjoy your stay. Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Encora's Dojo Live, where we have candid conversations with industry leaders tackling the biggest technology challenges in travel and hospitality. I am your host, Kim Lantis, and today, this beautiful April 29th, 2025, we're going to be diving into episode number 3 of our Redefining the Digital Storefront series, looking at insights from hospitality's direct booking leaders. Today, we're going to be discussing the guest obsessed hotelier, personalization, data, and the power of AI. Here to tell us all about it is Eric Lutz, CEO and co founder of Olive. Eric, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Of all the words to trip over, it was beautiful. I thought I was going to trip over guest obsessed, but we kind of
You crushed it.
crushed it. I love it. Today's conversation is going to be super fun. I'm very interested, in Olive's take as a booking engine, what that looks and feels and how that's different. And of course, how you're making that guest obsessed. But before we do, I would like to kick off that conversation with your origin story. You and your co-founders, are former hoteliers who decided to reimagine the booking engine. What that experience, the whole thing. I'm curious as to what pain points pushed you to say, let's build a new kind of platform. And how did your background kind of shape that vision?
Amazing. Perfect question and perfect way to kick it off. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a story, right? So maybe you can come with me. Imagine standing in the lobby of a grand hotel. Marble is gleaming, scent of fresh flowers in the air. There's that quiet hum of anticipation. Every moment is carefully designed as if it was just for you. But for too long, before guests ever arrived at that doorway, their first experience was something else entirely. It was a clunky, impersonal website, a broken first impression, a really missed opportunity to inspire trust, excitement, connection. So at Olive, we believe that the future of hospitality is digital, and it begins long before a guest ever sets foot inside your doors. It starts with that first glance, the first scroll, the first spark of feeling, I have arrived. So our mission is really simple. It's to help hotels reclaim those magical moments, to make that digital journey feel just as personal, just as welcoming, and just as unforgettable as this day itself. So in 2025 and beyond, the brands that win are going to craft journeys, and that's always starting with that very first click. So
I
it
love
was
it.
really that belief. That guest deserved to feel seen, feel welcome from that very first click, and that's exactly what inspired us to build Olive. So, before I became a founder, I was a hotelier. I started in the business as a night auditor. I lived through this firsthand. We spent so much time and energy creating these beautiful stays. We were crafting service, that attention to detail, these little moments of wow. But then online, where the guest journey really begins, we were often failing them. Websites felt transactional. Booking engines created friction, not excitement. It wasn't the experience that we promised inside of our walls. So we realized if we could reimagine that very first digital moment, if we could bring true hospitality into the booking experience, we could change everything, not just for the guests, but for the hotel too. And that realization became our mission to help hotels turn every first click into the beginning of an unforgettable guest journey.
All right, got another tongue twister in there for us. Unforgettable guest journey.
There we go.
You touched on
Important.
this. It is. You've got magical moments, crafting journeys, unforgettable. I love this. So
We
you touched
love
on
the
this.
guest experience. It's all about guest experience at the end of the day, right? That's why we're
Absolutely.
here.
It is, and it's what makes travel hospitality so much fun, I think. You
I
touched
love
on
it.
this a bit already, but I do want to go a bit deeper because Olive's booking engine is often compared to a typical e-commerce experience. And I want to know, why do you believe that this is the kind of user experience that's critical for today's traveler, today's guest? And what kind of has been the response from both sides? You mentioned this already, the hotel, the hoteliers, as well as the traveler.
Of course. It's a great question because for us, it's really bigger than just looking like Amazon or Netflix. But I think first to kick it off, maybe you can tell me, when is the last time you had a memorable digital experience with a hotel? And maybe memorable in a good way, not a bad way.
Mm, ah, I
I
have to
know it.
confess that I have to confess, and this is kind of why we're here. And the direct,
it
the digital storefront, most of the time I go through the OTA. Uh,
there you
and
go.
then what happens? Yeah, and then what happens is if I do have that magical moment at a hotel, if they can capture my loyalty from the stay, then the
Yep.
next time I go back, I'm gonna go direct.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Exactly.
No, I do.
Exactly.
But that's
All right.
also
I love
because
it.
I have the inside knowledge of knowing that, oh, poor little hotel. I'm always like rooting for the underdog, and I'm like, I'm gonna go direct, but only after I already love you.
Exactly. And that's an important strategy as well, which I think we're going to get into a little bit later. But, it's important to consider that today's guests compare every digital experience, not hotel brand to hotel brand, because let's face it, and unfortunately, and a reason why we're here, there's not that many great digital experiences when it comes to hotels. Obviously, the OTAs are crushing it when it comes to digital experience. But the guests are comparing us to Amazon, to Airbnb, to Uber, to DoorDash, right? All of these really simple, fast, intuitive digital experiences. TikTok, right? Folks are spending, I heard the other week, I heard the average TikTok user is spending 90 minutes a day on TikTok. That's insane. 90 minutes. I wish I had the time to spend 90 minutes on TikTok, but it's amazing, right? It's personal, it's high speed, it's intuitive. And that's what guests expect today. They expect that speed, the personalization. They expect simplicity, or they bounce. And this isn't just a hypothesis that we have. We see it in the stats. We see it in the metrics when we dig into it. You look at the average website conversion rate, it's less than 1%. You look at the average booking engine abandonment rate, it's over 97%. They're telling us that they're getting out of here, that this is not an experience that resonates with them, which I think is, again, such a missed opportunity for hotels. But when the booking, it feels intuitive, when it feels fast, when it feels personal, guests lean in instead of pulling back like we've seen for so many years. And you asked about how are hoteliers responding, how are guests responding. So hoteliers, they love it because they're finally delivering an experience that matches the quality of their brand. That was really important from us, or for us, from day one at Olive, was allowing that brand to shine through, right? When you're redirected to maybe a template that has a font or a different color, but it's a very templatized experience, it doesn't really allow that brand to shine through. And again, this is a first experience. This is a first interaction that a guest is having with your brand. And, we see oftentimes, going back to the TikTok point, right? Our team will send TikTok or Instagram reels around, and I'll get more out of a 60-second TikTok or Instagram reels that a user or a guest had created than I do on the entire website. So that's kind of that feeling that we're trying to recreate. But so hoteliers really love that fact that we let the brand shine through. It's fully customized for every single hotel that we work with. And the guests, they're telling us they love it, whether it's people in our network. We have the mom test at Olive, where we'll give our phone or give a booking experience to a mom, maybe a niece, a nephew, say, hey, can you figure your way through this? But really, we know the guests love it because they're booking more and a lot more. And that's the number one way that we can tell that they love the product, is that they are just booking more. So
Booking more, a lot more. You already threw some numbers out at me, so I'm going to ask you. 1% booking rate, 97, I think you said, abandoned. What are
yep.
the good numbers?
So look, and again, maybe that's like a generalization across the industry. I get this question all the time, right? Hotels will say, hey, I have a conversion rate of this, and what's a good benchmark? And that's to say, it depends. The average in the industry is right around 1%. Look, we have hotels, and it depends what's going on at the hotel, right? We have some hotels that are really just rooms operations. Maybe they are just focused on being the best price rooms in the best location. So
Right.
they have a lot of really high intent traffic coming. So we'll have conversion rates often north of 10 or 15%, which is, crazy. But again, you're getting those really
Yeah,
high
yeah.
intent guests who are landing on the site. We have other hotels who, we work with a really great hotel in Portland, and they have a James Beard award-winning bar on property. And we saw that over 50% of their website traffic just goes to that bar. They never touch anything rooms related. So that property, they came to us with right about that 1% average. And I think today they're between 3 and 5%, depending on the month. So
Oh, wow.
we've seen a really massive increase. And that's what we focus on at Olive is the guests are coming to your hotel site. It's overwhelmingly included as a part of that guest journey. There's a study out there that said 87% of guests will visit your hotel's website before they make a reservation, no matter where they ultimately book through. So,
Right.
I think, again, we always get back to the kind of the discovery, the OTA versus the direct, but hotels should realize and need to realize that the guests are on your site. They overwhelmingly include that as a part of their digital guest
Mm.
journey. So by making it easier, more seamless, getting more folks into the booking funnel, which is getting into the booking engine, which with Olive, it is the rooms page. That's where we're seeing the real success with
Nice.
hotels today.
And you did a great job answering the question, and my apologies for kind of putting you on the spot there. And
No,
understanding that
please.
everything is uh, personalized, right? And it's not going to be this cookie cutter experience for a guest or for a hotel and what that solution is. But I think it comes down to that discovery process, which is a really good segue into diving deeper for today's chosen topic of conversation. What does it really mean to be guest obsessed? I think your example of the hotel out of Portland with the James Beard restaurant is really good because it's like, hey, you have this, and this is what's driving people to your site. So let's make the most of it. From your perspective, how has that guest expectation evolved? What should hoteliers be doing today to meet them, in that guest obsession way? Topic of conversation today, before, but also during and after the booking.
Of course. Again, and I think, right, our team is ex hoteliers, ex e-commerce folks, but myself, at the end of the day, I am a lifelong student of the industry. I get really romantic about it. There's a reason why I'm in this business. I absolutely love it. I think hospitality is one of the greatest acts of service that you can bestow on somebody. And I think in many cases, the industry has kind of lost the plot a little bit. And I don't say that, to call anybody out, but I think that, and we look at where the industry is today. We look at the teams that are on property today and the amount of things that they have to do. And one of the things it comes back to is all the different systems they have to juggle. But without getting too far off on a tangent, I think being guest obsessed today means obsessing about the entire journey, not just the stay. And I know that for a number of reasons, right? Sometimes we're just focused on that guest who is standing in front of us, or we're focused on, hey, we just need to get the rooms clean by 3 o'clock so they have a clean place to lay their head at check-in time, right? These are all really important pieces of the puzzle. But I would say how to go from being maybe guest oriented to guest obsessed is just starting and focusing on that entire guest journey wherever they're first starting, right? Which overwhelmingly in 2025, it's starting digitally long before check-in. And it really means anticipating the guest needs at every single stage, whether that's at the discovery stage, whether it's at booking, while they're on stay, maybe pre-arrival, right? We've had a huge focus at Olive on what does that pre-arrival experience look like. And I think it's one of the most under-leveraged pieces of the guest journey, right? Most hotels will book, a guest will book, we'll send a confirmation email, and then maybe a day before, maybe 3 days before, we'll send a pre-arrival email. But think of this entire time, right? Look, depending on the hotel and their booking windows, some are a week, 2 weeks, but some hotels, and especially a lot of the hotels we work with, their booking windows are 60 to 90 days. What a really great time to start that relationship with the guest, understand who they are, and start delivering that hospitality. So what is that about? It's about making the guests feel recognized, making them feel valued, making them feel in control kind of every step of the way. And I think the hotels that get this right are going to feel less like brands and more like trusted hosts, which to me is really the heart of the business, right? It is hosting a stranger, showing them an incredible time, bringing them into your space, treating them as if they're an extension of your family. But I think at the end of the day, it's really about being more proactive rather than reactive, anticipating needs before a guest tells you, which is really, really important, obviously, from the digital touch point, because I see a lot of hotel websites or, a lot of booking engines today. It's kind of a one-way street, right? The guest is going and they're interacting, but how are you speaking back to the guest?
Hmm.
I don't know if, again, I get romantic about service. I don't know if you have a, example of some incredible service that you've gotten, not necessarily digitally, but I think we all have these incredible stories. And that's another thing that I see hotels really leaning into more is that storytelling aspect, right? Not only, hey, we have this incredible property. You see many of the websites or booking engines, it gets into the more functional things, like we
Hmm.
have a king size bed and we have two sinks and we have a bathtub and we have a shower. But, at the end of the day, people are what drive this business, right? And the interaction, that emotional connection. So I don't know. Any good examples that you have of? I know you were just at Disneyland with the family. Disney is
Uh-huh.
like an incredible factory of magical experiences. I don't know, maybe something at Disney or something in relation to that trip that really inspired you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of the stay, I have to be honest, it was literally kind of just the place to lay our head because we had extremely long days. We were out at 8
Of
a.m. and we
course.
came back at essentially midnight. And so,
Oof.
and that, yeah, it was worth it. But I think in terms of being guest obsessed with Disney, there was a lot of hits, a couple misses, but I think that for them, it was just the biggest thing for me is this sense of otherworldliness, talking about the journey, right? And if you think about the Disneyland park, how they have it divided up in worlds and you kind of go into different worlds, and it literally feels like you've just walked 30 yards and you're suddenly in a whole different place than you
Yeah,
were before. And I think to me, that is what magic is about, those magical moments of just this transportation and the ability to absolutely disconnect from whatever else might be going on in your life. Even if it's just for that moment, those few hours, the rest of the
I love
world's
it.
silent. And to me, I think that's what makes a really good stay.
I agree too. I love it. I know we were chatting earlier. I grew up not too far from Disneyland. It definitely inspired me from a very young age for exactly that. And I see hotels, especially destination resort hotels, as very much a similar vibe, right? Is a place where you go to escape, where everything, again, it just feels like it was crafted just for you. Who doesn't love to have your room made up by somebody else and be able to eat in bed and not have to worry about it? Like, it's
Yeah.
incredible. So
Even if it's for a few days, but we love it. We love it. And that's
ex-
why we're here. Talking about
exactly.
crafting and making this personalization, this journey easy. Got to bring in the ever present question here on Dojo Live AI. Let's talk about
Let's
AI
do.
in booking. In what specific ways is Olive using AI to improve these conversations, that personalization, upselling? Can you share a tangible example or result from a hotel using Olive's platform?
Of course. So obviously, lots and lots. I don't think any of us have gone a day since November 2023 without hearing about AI, right? We hear about it, we talk about it, whether it's on the news, whether it's in conversations. And at Olive, we think of the AI not as a buzzword, as it kind of risks on being on the edge of just becoming a buzzword in many conversations, but we see it as a real way to deliver better hospitality digitally. So at Olive, we use artificial intelligence, which is primarily machine learning, which guess what? Even isn't the exciting AI that everybody's talking about today. All right. Most of that conversation is around generative AI. And look, I know there's a lot of conversation about AI. There's a lot of, understanding or misunderstanding about AI. For anybody listening, I recommend go and get a ChatGPT subscription. and just play around with it. It really reminds me of the early days of the internet when it was just kind of the wild, wild west and you're discovering things and just figuring out, okay, what can I do with this? How can I fit this into my life? What is the value here, right? Even, for in work, right? When we have even today, right? I use ChatGPT to help me come up with talking points for these
Mhm.
different questions today. And it saves a lot of time and comes up and really just helps in that brainstorming and synthesizing. I think, it's a little obvious when folks just copy and paste straight from ChatGPT. I don't think we're quite there yet for just being able to fully outsource our brains, but it's a tool. It is an incredible tool. And I think the best way to learn it is by using it. But I digress from that. I just put that out there because I know we have it in
Sometimes
our logo. Folks
this,
ask about it.
yeah, but the simple, we can get back to the machine learning because I think, like we were saying, even with the booking journey, if we're
Yep.
comparing it to e-commerce, simple resonates. So,
Exactly. Yep. So we use machine learning so that we personalize that experience for a guest in real time. So you can think of it as a recommendation engine. So depending on the guest behavior when they land on the site, maybe a referral source like where they're coming from, right? If they come from a TikTok or they're coming from Google or a Google ad, or we can tailor that experience and recommend different rooms, different offers, different upgrades. What makes it really exciting for us is we're able to adapt offers and packages dynamically. So maybe if somebody hesitates throughout the booking process, we can offer them a better fit in that process without losing that guest who might completely abandon. And the results, right? Everybody wants to know the results, what it does for hotels. It's been very exciting to see. So on average, we've seen hotels double their direct bookings really by focusing on that guest journey, personalizing that journey. But even more than that, we've had some really exciting results with hotels. We've had hotels grow their top line revenues 15% or more. There's a lot of these revenue opportunities that hotels in the past might have expected guests to go and wade through the entire website and find out what might be offered on the property, or similar to how a concierge might act or how a great host will proactively offer these things to the guest when it makes the most sense. And then I think one of the most exciting things is obviously we talk all the time about just the systemic labor shortages in the industries. We're having to do more than ever with less than ever. And I know there's some really great people out there who are trying to fix some of those things. I
mhm.
think technology is going to remain and be a really, really important piece of that. But, one of these hotels that grew their revenue, they also decreased their call center volume over 40%, which I think is really important because then it allows the teams on property, because we know that okay, some hotels have call centers. Most hotels, the front desk is answering the calls. So the last thing you want to do is when you have a line or a guest in front of you is pick up the phone to help somebody else. But you want to, it's again, we can't ignore everything outside of, off the property because we're focused on what's going on the property. So I think that this has been a really early proof point that better technology and a better experience causes a number of improvements to the business. And I think by making that service delivery a lot easier, that's what enables, I think the future of hospitality. And, it's not about automation or AI replacing people. It's about how we extend that hospitality to those digital touch points. And that's really where we see AI, and what we see
Mhm.
AI as is it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to finally deliver on that promise of personalization. I think the industry did a really, really good job at delivering personalization, probably in the pre-internet era, right? But dynamics have changed. On-property teams look different than they did before. So what AI is, it's an opportunity for us to provide that personalization, but at a scale that was never before possible. So that's why I'm really excited to not only be a part of that kind of from the technologist side
Uh-huh.
now, but also see how hotels are taking these tools and how they're transforming their operations with it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking a lot about the guest journey. That's the booking experience. You have the stay, you have, when they're exiting, and then what's happening afterward as well. I'm curious of how this might kind of come full circle in terms of how all of my is leveraging data, from the booking journey to influence the future, what's going on in terms of pricing, loyalty, design decisions. You mentioned
Oh
where
yeah.
is stuff coming from, the source, TikTok, etc. What metrics or guest behaviors do you consider to be kind of most important right now, in terms of the booking experience and then the repeat booking?
It's a great question. So, data is a huge unlock. And I don't think it's just for conversion, but really for how we truly understand our guests, right? So, I think hotels, I get it. You're beat over the head with data, data, data. You got to have the data. Okay, hotels are a treasure trove of data. If you look in any of their different systems, which that gets back to some of the problems with leveraging the latest advances in artificial intelligence, right? What does it need? It needs data, right? I was fortunate to speak last year on a panel at the Independent Lodging Congress about, the panel was called Data is the Fuel That Powers AI. And it's true, right? So it's important to be collecting this data, but it's also important to collect the right data. That's one of the things that we help hotels with. I think that was one of our biggest pain points. Back to the first question, Yamina, one of my co-founders, she comes from the world of e-commerce, and we started working together back in 2019, if we even remember the pre-COVID world at this point. And that was one of the biggest pain points for her as a marketer, was how do you effectively market without any data or any insight? Because a lot of the other vendors in the space, whether it's strategic or whether it's simply because they're unable to, they're hoarding a lot of that data. And it's really, really important data, one, to power AI, but two, just for the hotels to understand who their guests are, right? I can't tell you how many times, part of our sales process, or when we're onboarding or talking to hotels, we will ask hotels, who is your guest, right? And many times, way too many times, unfortunately, I hear, I'm in Los Angeles. So let's say I say, hey, Eric, who is your guest? And they'll say, anybody coming to Los Angeles. And that is just the worst thing for me to hear, right? Because if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're going to be nothing to nobody, right? And it comes down to that data, who the guests are, where they're coming from, who your most profitable guests are. And I think a lot of that comes down to the digital, the booking experience, what their behavior is. They're telling you about their intent, right? What they're valuing, where they're hesitating, what ultimately wins them over. But again, none of the other booking platforms are sharing any of this data. And it's really, really important data. Again, not to power AI, but to just run your business. And so we help hotels in the collection and actioning of that data. We, we take a note out of my own playbook, which we're proactive with the data. Instead of just serving hotels more dashboards, we actually serve proactive insights that could say something like, hey, your booking pace in the next week is down X%. What about pushing this promotion because you're missing that piece of your business, which you historically had? Things like that, right? So I know that's very kind of pie in the sky, and you ask specific, like, what do we do? What do we look? Conversion rates, super important, right? Just taking website traffic and determining how many folks are actually booking. For us, conversion rate alone wasn't enough. So we actually look every single step of the funnel. We want to see exactly where the guests are falling off to see if we can tell why the guests are falling off and then plug some of those holes. We look at cart or checkout abandonment rates. We look at the time to book. We look at upsell acceptance rates, loyalty signups during bookings. I mean, we're collecting hundreds of data points. We even recently rolled out surveys on our confirmation page, just asking the guests why they're traveling, or where they may have discovered the hotel. And you would be surprised at the amount of uptake we get on folks filling out those surveys. We have, I think the last time we looked at the numbers, about 60% of our checkouts are actually filling out those surveys, which is really, really powerful data for the hotel, because they've unlocked and uncovered maybe a convention or a group or a corporate account that they didn't know was traveling previously. And then, hey, that's another really great place to capture that business. Maybe Kim discovers the hotel on an OTA, and we figure out, oh, great, she's always in Los Angeles. Well, let's see if we can set up a corporate account and get that guest to come back direct, and build that relationship in the guest or with the guest. So our goal really isn't just about optimizing the numbers, but better
Mhm.
understanding the guests. I think the metrics are how we listen, and when a guest can't really speak directly to us. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's, yeah.
No, I loved it. I think that was very insightful. And you touched on data, something that sharing data, which most time doesn't happen, but it leans into the complexity of the tech ecosystem with
Oh, yes.
hospitality. How do you ensure that all of is integrated effectively with PMS, the RMS, other systems? And I also wanted to congratulate you on your recent partnership with Infor. And
Thank you.
what new doors does that open for hotels? How important is it to have this level of interoperability, another tongue twister for us, in delivering true guest-centric value?
I mean, I'll just start by saying great hospitality today is impossible if your systems don't talk to each other, right? And I think that the real reason that true integration matters is not technical, but it's human. So when the systems don't talk to each other, the guests can feel it. Guests expect seamless personalization today, but that's really impossible if your tech stack is fragmented behind the scenes. And to your point, I think true hospitality in a digital world just demands interoperability. And I'm proud that we both got that word out without tripping over our own words. But look, so for decades, right, hotel tech has been siloed. You have the PMS over here, the CRS over there, you have a loyalty system somewhere else. What is perhaps most tragic for me is booking engines are like bolted on the side, right? Almost as if an afterthought. And it's made operations painful, but I think worse than that, it's fractured the guest journey at the very moment that hotels need to win trust from the guests. So the status quo that we see out there was really built around the limitations of old tech, not the needs of the modern guest. So we appreciate the congratulations on the Infor partnership. It is huge for us. It's an incredible not only partnership with a great partner, but also I think signals a new type of partnership, and that's really what our focus with Infor is determining and forging a first of its kind partnership where it's about creating a true ecosystem. So not just, hey, we're another integration, Infor has 800 plus integrations, but it's how can we forge a true partnership where we're working together. And any partnership we have, which we have a number of partners, we approach it the same way. We say, hey, how can we together make this the best manifestation or the best version of our products together, right? What are the pain points, on Infor? What are the pain points that you've had on the booking engine side, and likewise, vice versa. And I think that Infor choosing to deeply integrate olives into their platform signals a massive shift in the industry. And that's that this old bolt-on model is dying. The future is integrated, intelligent, and guest-first platform. So I think together with Infor, and there's a lot more to come on that as this partnership evolves, and we have some great customer stories coming out as well. But together, we're giving hotels the ability to create these beautifully orchestrated journeys without needing a
Mhm.
PhD in system integration to pull it all off, which is feels like between the middleware and all the different, you need a PhD. And guess what? I don't have one of those. So I think that's the future of hospitality tech. It's not more systems; it's better systems that disappear into the background so that the guest experience can shine through.
All right, you jumped ahead a bit on the future. We'll get there again, but I want to talk about a different kind of partnership, maybe the partnership that's not quite as what we're aiming for with things like Infor, and that would be the healthy OTA partnership. I know here on our Dojo Live series, we're focusing on redefining our digital storefronts, increasing those direct bookings. But at least as it stands today, and as we can foresee, OTAs are here to stay. What's your take on how hotels can maximize revenue while still maintaining that healthy OTA kind of partnership relationship? Where do you see the opportunity for a coexistence?
Amazing. Look, like you, I'm a realist, right? OTAs aren't going anywhere. And honestly, they play a really important role. They help hotels get discovered, especially with new guests who may have never found you otherwise. But I think where the real opportunity lies, excuse me, is that discovery happens through the OTAs, but loyalty should happen through that direct relationship with the guest. So once a guest discovers you, the direct experience, it needs to be so good, right? It needs to be faster, easier, more personal, more rewarding, that it feels like the obvious choice for every future stay. Much to your point, what we were discussing earlier about OTAs, and maybe you use that as a way to acquire the customer the first time, and then that's where the hotel needs to step in and ensure that they're nurturing that relationship kind of throughout the customer life cycle. And it's not about fighting the OTAs; it's just about playing smarter. So use OTAs to really power and fill the top of your funnel, but then you should build out that loyalty base through a guest first direct experience that feels different, feels personal, and give them a reason to come back to it, right? And I think that's where the real opportunity is, and that's where what we're helping hotels to do at Olive. And I think, again, it's about coexistence, and that works when you stop thinking in terms of just the first booking or every booking, and you start thinking in terms of that entire lifetime value.
A journey. I love it. Excellent advice. Shifting gears here as we're coming to the final few minutes of our conversation today. Beyond what Olive is already addressing, what are some of the challenges in booking tech in general that still kind of keep you, as the co-founder and
Oof.
CEO, up at night? What emerging technologies or guest behaviors do you think will be kind of have the most impact for the future of hotel bookings over the next maybe year or two?
That's a big one. Many things keep me up at night, but I think the biggest challenge it's speed. It's how fast the guest and guest preferences are evolving compared to how slowly this industry sometimes moves. Right? I think Airbnb is a perfect example of it, right? I think that a lot of the assumption around the growth of Airbnb was that guests are just very price conscious, and that's why they're gravitating towards that platform. But I don't know the last time you've looked at Airbnb, but it's not necessarily the cheapest option around, right? I think what Airbnb told us is that guests, and especially when you look at the guest profile of the average Airbnb traveler, they tend, and not as a rule, but they tend to, in general, be younger, millennials, Gen Z, who are really looking for unique, one of a kind experiences. And why I love the Airbnb platform is I can go to another city and I can see what it's like to live as a local in that city. And to me, that's such an incredible opportunity that without that platform, didn't exist. And uh, obviously, there's startups and disruptors, but I think they've filled a really important piece of the market, which is, hey, we're looking for these really unique, one of a kind, experience driven stays. And I think that's what the guest is voting with their dollars and saying, hey, these are the types of stays that I want. So I think that other parts of the industry move a little bit more slowly, especially on the tech side. Sometimes it feels like we're kind of slogging through mud, but guests today, they expect mobile first, which is crazy that in 2025 we're still talking about mobile first. But many guests are still saying, hey, your website is not optimized for mobile. That's when they're on TikTok, right? They want to go to a site that is optimized for mobile. They're not going to go and get their laptop out. In that friction point, you lost them, right? They want instant experiences. They want personalized experience. Back to what we were talking about earlier. They want the kind that they're getting from all the other digital platforms they're using, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Ubers, and they don't want to wait 5 more years for hotels to catch up. So I think if we don't close that gap, if we aren't able to deliver frictionless, emotional guest first journeys today, I think we're going to risk losing another entire generation of loyalty. But as
Wow.
far, yeah, uh,
Listen up.
exactly. I I do. That's what keeps me up. I don't know. I can go on and on and on. But I think on the tech side, and so a little bit more on the exciting side, right? I think a few trends that I'm watching really closely. Obviously, personalization is key, but personalization. What's the next level of that personalization? How do you make it feel effortless, respectful, not creepy, right? Obviously, we're
Mm,
collecting a lot of data around these guests, but an important piece is to not make it feel like Big Brother is watching you, but as a gracious host or somebody who's anticipating your needs. And I think that can be a really fine line. Things like invisible commerce, one click, zero friction booking. And I think perhaps one of the things I'm most excited about is this idea of experiential loyalty, where guests are staying not because of the points that they're getting on a stay, but because they actually have that emotional connection with a brand, and they're building that relationship. I think that's another great opportunity for hotels is in loyalty, right? I think
mm,
many other industries, uh, whether it's loyalty or, whether you go to the supermarket and they have their reward or loyalty program, they're using that data that they're collecting to better serve the customer. And I think in many cases, we're just using it as a hook to get them to do what we want them to do, right? But it's like, okay, how do we take it to the next level? How do we make that emotional connection? How do we better serve the guests? And I think that the future belongs to these brands that are going to move fast, stay human, right? That's a really important piece of it, but never lose sight of just what hospitality is really about.
Thank you. And for the hotelier watching today, final question, who wants to start delivering a more guest obsessed, digitally savvy experience, where do you recommend they start? And of course, if they want to, get a hold of you or Olive directly, how might they go about doing that?
Amazing. I think my best advice can just start, right? Start small, but start now. So doing things like audit your booking experience as if you were a first time guest, right?
Mhm.
I am guilty of this. My many years as a hotelier, did I ever look at our website? Not much, right? I did not look at it much, but that is where your guests are, right? We'll spend all kinds of time on property tours and making sure that, everything is just flawless on property. But what about the website, right? I can't tell you, I'm on hotel websites all the time now. I can't tell you how many folks I'm still on their sites. And, months later, I'll still get the pop up for the Easter brunch menu, right? That everybody has to click through. And it's like, okay, is this the best, UI, UX, that guest experience? So looking for that friction, slow load times, how many clicks it takes, uninspiring or, kind of these one size fits none offers, right? I think just auditing it with that really critical eye so that you're prioritizing, removing any of these friction points, personalizing any of those touch points, and just creating a clear pathway to loyalty. I think, look, there's tons of work to be done, but you don't have to do everything overnight. You just can't afford to stand still. So at risk of the typical adage, it's like the best time to fix your digital storefront was yesterday. The second best time is today. And anybody who needs a little help with that, obviously, I'll plug myself, can reach out to us, tryolive.com, check us out, can get a demo right on the site, or reach out to me directly. My email is eric@tryolive.com. Really easy. Would love to hear from you. Happy to give my thoughts on any hotel website, any booking experience at any time.
Amazing. Thank you. A big thank you to you, Eric, for sharing what it takes to deliver a guest obsessed hospitality in a digital first world. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Ancora, for making these conversations possible. Ancora does partner with travel and hospitality companies to accelerate innovation through world-class engineering solutions. And of course, a reminder, if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Dojo Live across all media, social, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And you can always check out our site, dojo.live, for more insights from industry leaders. That's where you'll find past episodes and also news on the upcoming discussions. Talking about upcoming discussions, and it's really interesting, Eric, that you mentioned Airbnb today, not because we're talking with Airbnb, but we are talking about the short-term rental space tomorrow. So check us out at 10
Amazing.
o'clock a.m. Pacific. Yes, with Eric, another Eric. It's the week of the Erics. Eric Goldreyer, founder and CEO of Savvy. And we're going to be taking a look at vacation rentals reimagined, the direct booking edge in short-term stays, advice for short term rental owners and what they need to know about direct booking and how it's shaping the future of travel tech. So be sure to check that out. And until then, stay curious, stay innovative. Bye for now. Thank you once again, Eric.